Hello, my name is Lemerk, and welcome to the Naval Sports League Game 1, Season 1. For our first-time watchers, the Naval Sports League, or NSL, is the ultimate naval competition in the game of Holdfast Nations at War. League battles are simple. Two teams, each led by a single admiral, pilot 5 large capital ships and 2 small support boats with the goal of sinking as many capital ships on the enemy team as they can within 35 minutes. Whoever sinks the most wins, and if there's a tie, we decide the winner by overall score. Teams consist of anywhere between 20 to 40 players, and the league provides mercenaries, extra players, to balance out any number disparities between the teams. Each player in this league, be they a team player or a mercenary, is competing hard for end of the season awards and accolades, and so they're going to be putting everything on the line, every battle, to not only entertain you, but to win glory and honor for themselves. Every battle will take place on a randomly chosen map with a randomly chosen wind direction. The wind powers the fleets and gives them speed, so the random wind direction shakes things up a little bit. Both of these factors mean that no two battles will ever be the same. The league is going to last for 9 months, from basically right now, late February, to November, with 3 games approximately a month for you to enjoy and some extra coverage on top of that. Once that main season is over, the top 3 teams in the league will duke it out to determine who wins the champion's crown of Season 1. The NSL is a collection of Holdfast Naval's most talented admirals, officers, and crews, and the tactical gameplay you'll see here is at a higher level than anything else this game has to offer. We hosts and co-hosts will be here for the entire time to help you to understand the decisions and strategies that you're going to see play out on the screen today in the NSL Coliseum. So, without further ado, let's get to some pre-game coverage. I'm joined today by veteran co-hosts Baboof and Amit. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Great. It's really good to be back. It's really good to be back again. I've been waiting for months and
I know, it's been a long
it's
break.
very exciting. Yeah. Been spending a lot of time thinking about it, lying on the sofa thinking about this, just like going through all the potential things in my mind. It's great to finally
Well,
get into it again.
we're going to be getting into a lot of it today. And Amit, how are you?
I'm good, checking in. I don't think I've co-hosted with the booth before. I have with a couple other people I've had the pleasure. Glad to be back. It's going to be a wild season.
Yeah, it is. So we have some big changes this season, which we're going to get into ahead of time. But let's start by introducing what we're going to be dealing with right now today in this battle. We have the Marines versus the Jackals of the Baltic Sea. Now, one of those names will be familiar to preseason viewers, but the other one will be a new name, the Marines. The Marines are a new team made from old parts. And so the Marines are led and formed originally by Kieran's, who was the leader of the Bona Partnership last season, but with some serious additions and co-partners that he's going to be working with throughout this season to achieve victory. And the additions that he has are the 77th. And so for those of you who maybe not in the nuts and bolts of how all these teams were put together last season, the 77th were half of the very, very successful Seawolves. They were the number 2 team in the league last season. They scratched out a very, very impressive few battles and a narrow victory over the Krakens, the number 3 team of the season, who were another unbelievable team, which we will see later in the season. Actually, I think next week. But so the Marines are the first RM who created the Bona Partnership. And then the 77th, who were part of the Seawolves, along with the 85th BV, which are another 3rd regiment that has joined them that I do not believe competed last season. As for the Jackals of the Baltic Sea, these guys are a completely changed and improved team from last season. Last season, they were the 8th bottom team of the league. This season, I think they have a shot at the big title because they have incorporated not only extra regiments, actually regiments, I'm not even sure all the different regiments that make this up because there's got to be like 5 of them. There are many of them. And they have also, I think the big coup for them is that they have taken 15 PP, which was half of the VOD Coalition, another team, and they've added it to their own team. So what we've seen over the break between the preseason and season 1 is a consolidation of teams from 8 teams into 6 extremely powerful teams. And I've just gotten the information on the Jackals. Before I pass it over to you two to talk a little bit about what this means as far as you're concerned for these teams, the Jackals are made of the 3D, the 17D, the 9 PP, and the 15 PP. These are 4 different regiments. some of whom competed together last year, some of whom were on separate teams that have now combined to make this super team. And you will see when we get into the battle that these teams are absolutely huge. And this is like a Polish sort of a Polish conglomeration of teams to create the Jackals of the Baltic Sea, and I am very excited to see how they perform. All right, so I've spoken enough here. Amit, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on these reorganizations and what they mean for these two teams today.
Well, I mean, obviously, some of these were drastic changes. Some of them are absorbing players from other teams that are very good. So, like, I'll give you some examples. Like, we've got Vex, Tigger, Nazgul, and Kieran's himself. These guys were part of the Bona partnership, as we know, and they were some of the top performing players from that team. And now they're injected into a new team. It's going to be very exciting to see what they bring to the table here. And on the opposite side, we've also got several members of the Jackals team previously that, Rosvin Ichu, Edward Teach, Milo, and I apologize in advance for some of the pronunciation here, me being a Western person.
Yeah.
Maddox Gaming, Prezis, Milo. There's a lot of amazing people who had some extremely good performance when it comes to their total score as well as the average output that they were putting out in each of their games. So that's talent that's retained on the Jackal side. And of course, once again, my point was they're absorbing some people as well from the VOD Coalition. That's right. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these teams are augmented and how their new strength is going to be put into the strategy side of things. Because it's one thing to have great members that are, great shots. It's another thing to see how that talent is used as well. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing here.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Baboof, let me hear your thoughts on this as well, and then take us into the maps, because we got to get through a lot of this information in a short period of time, because this battle is going to be starting any minute now.
All right, so I'll do it quickly. So the Marines is such an interesting team to me because these are really the opposites attract teams, basically. The Sea Wolves and the Bona Partnership, those are the ones that they were before the regiments. The Sea Wolves were the second, as you said, in the league. They were a highly aggressive, strike first, don't ask questions, take risks kind of team. It worked for them a bunch of the times, not always. Against us, they took a risk in their strategy, it didn't work out. But they rolled the dice and they had a lot of luck with it. It worked. Bona Partnership was literally the opposite. They were very disciplined, patient. They marched in lockstep. They didn't take a lot of risks. Very kind of cautious, which I like. But they sometimes lacked a little bit of that oomph that killer instinct that you really need to succeed. So if these two teams, if this merger works, you could see a team that's highly disciplined and highly aggressive, highly striking. If it works out, this could be a real contender. I'm very excited to see. Or maybe these two cultures don't gel at all, and we end up with a mess. We'll find out today.
Yeah, it is really whose philosophy comes through on this. I know that today our admirals for the Marines are Kieran's, and for the Jackals is Catsup. So these are guys we've seen before, and we know that Kieran's, he's probably on the more conservative, organized side of things. So we'll see if the injection of 77 gives him a little, could give him extra confidence.
Yeah, surely they've talked over what they want to do. They're not. I mean, they wouldn't have joined together if they hadn't worked something out and looked at what had gone wrong last time and what went well and thought of something.
Yeah, something else we have to consider as well is that the number one captain in the entire preseason was Chuyev Choi.
Yeah,
is now going to be deployed on another team, so you can't discount that as well.
Yeah. Wait, I had one thing, just not to neglect the Jackals, but they were, I actually liked a lot of the Jackal stuff they did last year. They did some good positioning. Against us, they positioned themselves well against the SCP, but they kind of lacked the punch. They kind of lacked the punch to get it done. And I'm hoping that the vodka, adding the vodka to it will be the secret ingredient, because vodka is all punch. They put all their points in strength. Yeah. So hopefully that'll add a bit of the firepower that they were lacking last season.
Okay. As we get into the map for today, Baboof, I'll ask you to introduce our viewers to the map and help them orient themselves as to, what it is that they will be seeing and where they can see the different teams.
Right. So this map used to be called Mylade. Now it's called Half and Half, because we got rid of the complicated names that I think only Killam and I ever learned.
I didn't. I made them and I didn't learn them.
Yeah, I only learned them because I went over, like, wrote down stuff about them, but I still, like, they were complicated. But I did like them. They're artistic, but yeah. So yeah, so the one side is fully empty. It's just open water. That's also in this case where the wind's going to come from the north, heading south. And then the other side, you have a whole bunch of islands. You have a bunch of long barrier islands, a few small islands in between, and then at the end, you have two long pill-shaped islands. You like to both teams, they kind of start on these on the ends of the barrier islands in the middle. 1 second, I just gotta. So we've seen this map 3 times. 3 times with the SCP, where they actually won twice and then lost the last time. And also the Seawolves have played it before, and the Jackals have played it before, but the Bona Partnership never did. So a bunch of different things happen in those 3 times. Like once upon a time, they both went into the open water and then back down. Once they both went into the islands. Once, like, one team, the SCP, like, split up and went back together again. All complicated, but the most noteworthy thing is that every single time the match was decided by one team getting stuck on the long pill-shaped islands near the edge. Every single time.
Yep.
And even though the SCP twice won that way, they actually in the third match ended up getting stuck on the same island and.
Proud of that one for my team, though.
That was you guys.
Did you not
I
watch
haven't
it?
even watched that VOD yet. It's oh god, I forgot, but I will.
It hurts
do
to watch a loss sometimes.
Well, it's not so much why. I mean, I was there. I had my own view of it, but I was hoping to be spared some of the commentator stuff. But you got to rip the band-aid up. It's been many months. I'll watch it after this match.
All right, we have our all sail, folks.
I love that match.
Let's really just quickly, before the ships engage, talk a little bit about some of the changes that are happening this season. We'll fill in a little bit of the space as we watch how these two teams start their openings. Oh, first off, did we talk about the wind? Did we tell everybody where the wind is today?
I think it's coming from the north.
Yeah, I think it is heading south today. Let me check up on that.
I'll do a double check on that.
Yeah, do a double check, but I believe it's heading south, which means if you're looking on the overhead screen, it is headed straight away from where we're looking towards that gated exit over there on the south side of the arena. So remember, wind speeds ships up. Ships go faster when they're going with the wind. They go slower when they're going against the wind. Very important as an admiral. Now, to quickly get into sorry. Let me just get out the wind conditions because they've changed a little bit from last season, folks. So as you guys may recall, last season the flagship was like a kind of the crucial, indispensable ship. That has gone away this season. Now the flagship, while being a very powerful ship, has had a few changes. First off, it is no longer about whether you sunk the flagship or didn't sink the flagship to determine victory for a team. All that matters is that every large ship that you see out there, whichever team has more of them at the end, that's the winner. Okay, as always, the smaller boats, the little guys, do not count, but the 13 gun and the 8 gun, the larger ships that you can see on your screen, those are the ones that count for victory and defeat. If one team has 4 of them and the other team has 3, the team with 4 wins the match. That's a victory. It doesn't matter whether the flagship is still up or down. Another thing we've changed over the season is the HPs of these ships. Now, last season, the flagship was an absolute truck. It could take a tremendous amount of damage alongside the fact that it could put out a tremendous amount of damage. That is changed a little bit. The 13 guns ship HP, which I'm just going to give you the numbers. It may not mean anything to you, but you'll get to see the relative change. Last season, it was at 12,000 HP. It is now at 10,500 HP. The 8 gun last season was at 9,000 HP. It is now at 9,250. So a little bump up for the 8 guns and a big bump down for the 13 guns. But that's okay because the 13 gun is not the be all end all of this anymore. It is now just it is still the best ship, no question, but it is now just one ship in the fleet. Okay. That's basically what you need to know to understand what you're going to see here today and about who's losing and winning in this battle. Let's start talking about these fleet formations. Amit, what are you seeing out here?
So from the side of the British, we've got a pretty standard formation moving out. We've got 2 8 guns up front. Once again, We see these teams starting to learn a little bit more about putting that 13 gun with the extreme range on that carronade in the middle. So that gives them a little bit more flexibility. We see sort of a mirroring of the formation in terms of like the formation used from the opposite side. And it's interesting to see that there may be a possible engagement out in the open waters, which is not typically what you see right in the beginning of a match.
Yeah.
Um, but what I can say is that formation that's being used on the French side there is actually what my team's formation looked like on our very last match of the preseason, and then we pulled inwards. Although it doesn't seem like that's what's about to happen here. So, um, yeah,
To
we'll
double
see
check
it
here, the
develop.
French are the French are the Marines, right? In
Yes, yeah. So
green.
just to make sure
Yeah,
that
Okay, I
our
don't think it
apologies.
said
viewers,
that.
I should use the team
our
names. Yes.
so our viewers and our hosts both can remember that the British team who is on the left of the overhead here, that is the Jackals. The team on the right, the French team, is the Marines. Okay, so we've got the Jackals on the British, the Marines on the French. The Jackals are the yellow ships, and the Marines are the green ships. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not totally surprised, but I actually was thinking that this is going to happen. Look, they've gone upwind. The Seawolves, sorry, the Seawolves. The Marines have taken the Conasect and they're getting the weather gauge. I think the Jackals, as a little bit of the underdog, they're going into the islands and waiting for the Marines to come to them, which is what I would do that in their case as well. Especially Vodka, they had success in getting in close and smacking into the enemy, and I think that's probably the best chance to win this if they get nice and dirty and close. I don't think they're gonna take the bait and come out and fight in the open water.
Yeah,
That
this
is
is,
true.
this is not something I was surprised to see. I was hoping these teams would come in guns blazing, but it does seem like, especially in the beginning of a new season, nobody wants to be the first guy to get like walloped. And so they're approaching each other with a lot of caution. But that's why we threw an extra 5 minutes onto these battles to give guys the time to do their opening setup, and still have time to finish a strong battle. Ahmed, I feel like I cut you off, so feel free if you were about to say something.
No, actually, you touched on what I was going to say there. Kind of you were just detailing how, you know, we like to see a lot of action, but there's a lot of game on that timer left. So I wouldn't be too worried about that yet. Definitely, I expect to see some action here in the next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
It
Now,
looks like the Marines are heading. They're
yeah, they're starting to curve in. I think they have the wind, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. Again, for our first time viewers, maybe this is the first time you're watching the NSL. It's important for you to understand how important the wind is. If you're looking at the overhead screen, we are basically where the wind is coming from, and the wind is going towards the other side. It's going south. You can see on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen that there is that compass that shows you the directions. So basically, imagine a line starting from the north and pointing straight to south. That's where the wind is going. Right now, both teams have what we would call neutral wind. Neither of them are going with that arrow, right, and getting the full benefit of the wind's addition to their ship speed. However, as we see this circle developing here, the team that is going to end up with the wind is the Marines, and that is the French here on the bottom of the overhead screen. Those are the green ships. They are going to turn as they turn to the right here. If they turn to the right, though, they do seem to be slowing down and maybe waiting for the Jackals to come close. This is very conservative. This is getting very conservative.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. That's what they did against the Bonaparte partnership as well. Remember the Seawolves in
Yeah,
their last match? They also sat and waited. They got surprised and they got sat.
yeah, they're delaying basically. I think maybe what they're doing is trying to get their fleet to come together. But nobody's rushing into this. Nobody. Now,
No.
when you have this wind, right? So as the Jackals, I'm sorry, not as Jackals, as the Marines have the opportunity to turn to the right and catch that wind, accelerating their ships and allowing them to close the distance very quickly and maybe catch the Jackals by surprise. If they do not utilize that soon, then the Jackals are going to come around, and even though they're going to end up going north, which is dead into the wind, they may do a whole nother revolution where then they switch spots with the Marines, and then the Marines don't have the wind and the Jackals do. So timing is everything in these battles, and that's what we're seeing here. These two teams do look like they're about to start engaging on this fairly soon. The Jackals right now are putting themselves into a position, that British team that you see in the distance on the overhead screen, as they come
I
out
would
through those
stop.
islands, they
I would
are.
stop if I was the Marines now. I'd stop.
I don't think the
Or
Jackals are going to just charge into this hailfire. I think they're going to
no,
see.
no,
You
no.
can
It
see
looked
them.
like for a second they
You can
would,
already
but
see
now they're
that
not
lead.
anymore.
Yeah, you can already see that lead 8 gun on the Jackal start starting to pull in.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he looked for a second like he would.
I think he's baiting
But
them.
they're not
I
that
honestly
big.
think
Maybe you. I was just about to say that as well. Took the words out of my mouth.
I think he's baiting. I think the Jackals are giving themselves the appearance of weakness going into the wind, right? All this stuff to get the Marines to break formation, which they're kind of doing, and move in. They're out of range right now. You can see those shots are not quite hitting. The 13 gun is in range. I don't think
Sure.
too many of the 8 guns are, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if the 8 gun shots are hitting. The 13 gun has a significant range
It does
increase
look like
over the
the
8 gun.
gunshots are a little bit falling short, about 50 meters or so, but
You know who is taking some damage is the Marines gunboats and rocket boats.
yes.
They are making a charge at the enemy fleet. Unfortunately, they are in full broadside of that enemy fleet, and they are going
It's
to
going down.
get tagged for it. So we may see that the opening moves of combat here are the Jackals just whittling down the reserves of the gunboats. And again, for those of you who have not experienced the NSL before, there are only 2 of these small boats allowed out at a time, but they have a pool. And they have a pool of, if I'm not mistaken, they have 5 gunboats and 2 rocket boats. Gunboats have long range cannons. Rocket boats are those like arcing trails that you're seeing in the air sometimes. They are short distance, heavily damaging, and can do a lot of havoc on a ship. But they do have a short range, and they're very prone to missing.
Yeah, one of them just went down. The other one's about to go down as well.
Yeah, I see 2 down now.
That's it. Yeah, that's 2 down.
All right, so the Marines have lost their first 2, and I believe those are both their rocket boats. I believe they pulled out 2 rocket boats at the beginning, and those are gone. So the Marines are now down to only gunboats, which are the more important of the boats. I think they're probably the better ones.
Jackals are heading towards their spawn, towards the Marine spawn. So those, yeah, look, they're already the Marines gunboats is already engaging.
Yeah, so
We'll
the
see.
Marines gunboats have an opportunity here to maybe put a little damage in, but they are in a very dangerous position.
This is actually what the Jackals did in their very first game in the preseason. They sailed into the enemy spawn and lost. I think their 13 gun lost their mast, which kind of decided the match then there. I don't think that'll happen this time. It's
Right
funny
now,
to see it happen again.
I think the Marines have got to get aggressive. They have
Yeah,
a
what are
great
they
opportunity.
doing?
Like the Jackals have shown them their butts. I mean, this is I guess maybe the Marines are hitting because there's no other reason to be sitting there and whipping shots like this.
Well, they've gotten so split apart. They have to wait for their fleet to come.
But they have the wind. I mean, their fleet is fully in the wind right now.
I don't know why
it's like they can chase them down if they want to.
I mean, if they banked to starboard and moved in on these ships, I think they could catch a lot of the rear ships. And I think that they're doing it now. I think it may be a little bit too late and a missed opportunity. While the Jackals are basically picking off their gunboats. Because as soon as a gunboat is active, they are a live target. And so what we're seeing here is these Jackals are just sitting at the spawn area of the Marines and picking off these boats as they come out of spawn. That's great for the Jackals.
Where are the Jackals gunboats now?
Yeah, they are. I believe they're in the islands somewhere.
Oh, are they right by the Marines fleet or no?
They could be. All right, so the Marines are now moving in. I think they realized that they have accomplished not a lot by being overly cautious in the beginning of this battle. But I'm not seeing a formation that I think they've got to dive through those 2 middle pill-shaped islands there and get in this battle. But it seems like what they're going to do is they're going to just hunt for the rearmost ship. Like the 13 gun is positioning itself over here to hit the rearmost A gun.
Boarding going on potentially on the second last Jackal ship.
Oh, we've got a warning for the Jackals on firing on unmanned vessels. This is the difficulty. You do not want to really put yourself in a situation where you're firing on, you could even possibly be firing on unmanned vessels. That may end up docking them some points after the battle if we have some footage of what's happening.
Oh, they stopped the boarding. The boarders managed to, I think, kill the captain and stop the boat, but I don't think it's made a big difference.
Yeah. And this, these boardings are really consequential when you're in the middle of heavy fire between ships. Yeah. When these ships have nothing to fire at and they're not really accomplishing much, it's really not a boarding action. Just delays it, guys, for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So
All right,
we're
now's the interesting bit, though.
yes. See
The
now
Marines are kind of
they're sloppy
I mean,
here.
their formation is all over the place.
Yeah. Now
And
let's talk about what they can do here, because it's easy to say that they're being sloppy here, but I think the important thing is like, what do they do from this position? What are their options? Because the Jackals are spinning around to have a very, very good aiming angle at that gap that the Marines are coming through right
yes,
now. The
we're at
question
our
is do they have range?
crucial islands here. We're at our crucial Tilshade Island here. I don't think the Jackals will. I mean, they will.
I think
be
the
on
Marines
one
are going to
side of
slip
it,
through.
but
Yeah, I think the Marines are going to slip through. They might take a little bit of
yes.
damage, but nothing
Oh,
really
there's
serious.
We do have
yeah,
some
but look,
close
the
action
Jackals might get
on
stuck on
these,
this island. Actually,
All right,
well, we'll
where
see.
I'm
we've
at?
got right in the center of the map. We've got some boarding actions with 2 gunboats from the VOD coalition here, or sorry, the Jackals boarding onto that 8-gun.
I don't like this from the Marines. Like they're getting some good shots off the Jackals right now.
So I mean, if I'm the Marines, I'm just foreseeing a line battle here. I don't know if there's anything necessarily tricky that they have up their sleeve that can change this from being 2 ships headed to the line battle. So a line battle is when both of the fleets just it's just like it sounds. They kind of line up across from each other and they just fire across the distance. A lot of times a team is looking for something a little bit more favorable to themselves than that line battle. Something more along the lines of cutting off the enemy from the front or cutting off the enemy from the rear. Right now, nobody's done tremendous damage to each other, so we haven't really lost or gained anything in these opening moves, but the fleet that has more cohesion in the beginning is the one that's going to gain the edge, and right now the fleet that has more cohesion is definitely the Jackals. The Marines are losing that. Not only that, but they've also fallen behind on the gunboats and rocket boats, so they're going to have to do some really great cannoneering. Something to look forward to in this battle is when they get a little bit. A D-mass on the lead ship.
Right there. Yep.
Lead ship D-mass. That is not good. That is not good. So whether that does anybody know whether that was from an axe or from a cannon shot? I must be from a carpenter, the carpenter class with their axes.
Yeah, there's
Carpenter.
There's
I'm hearing.
there looks
I'm hearing it's
there's
carpenter.
a British gunboat in front of the lead Marine ship. Sorry, the Jackals gunboat there. So that's probably where it came from.
This is an interesting position. The Marines need to turn a little bit starboard. I think they could catch wind and cut off the front because of this small circular island that's kind of in front of the Jackals fleet, right? So those yellow ships have that small circular island directly in front of them, whereas the Marines kind of have an open space to cut across in front of it. They could
split apart, the Marines.
What I will say is that it looks to me like there's not been a ton of damage traded between these ships. I am seeing that both of the flagships have taken a little bit of heat, but we're not seeing anybody run away with it yet. Even
no,
that
and
D-mass.
This is smart what the Marines just did, that they slowed down their second 8-gun and let the 13-gun pass because they were just too far.
Yeah, and they're pulling their 13-gun back a little bit, which is huge.
Yeah.
Because it gets it out of the range. The 8 guns have a shorter range than the 13-gun, and so if you can make it so that all of one team's 8 guns can hit the other team's 13-gun, but all the other team's 8 guns cannot hit your 13-gun, then you're gonna get the edge on the ship HP here. But let's see how it plays out. We are seeing some damage being taken by these flagships.
Yeah, what's nice for the Marines is that those 3 back 8 guns are able to focus 13-gun, whereas the Jackals aren't really they aren't really able to focus anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done some damage. The damage differences aren't huge, but
yeah, I'm a little concerned here for the Marines, given look at the formation that the Jackals have. They have options here, whereas the Marines are basically forced to pull out and show the rear, or they can stop and hold. But then as the Jackals continue to move around the island, they can continue firing over that island and around it onto the Marines. So it's definitely one of those
Look at the Marines
situations I would
flagship.
not love to be in.
Yeah, Marines
exactly.
are in trouble.
Massive fire.
Yeah, Marines are in
Oh
trouble. No
no.
question about it. Their flagship is now down to half ship HP.
Why did they turn so much? That island was,
I
I mean, I guess the
I
island
think
was beating them a little bit, but not that much.
I'd love to find out. I'm pretty sure they must have lost a lot of cannons. My guess would be that their starboard side
Yeah.
battery has been reduced to the point where they're not able to keep parity,
This is
and they're thinking, let's
crazy.
sacrifice some ship HP. Well, remember, the flagship is not the be all end all here. You can
No,
still
it's
win. Your
true,
flagship
but
goes down, it's okay. You can live. And it looks like they're regrouping. They look like they might be sacrificing their crippled 8-gun,
yeah,
and
Where's
they're just
the
turning this
Jackals
battle
turning? Are they
around.
turning right? Are the Jackals turning right? They
Yeah,
are.
I think they're both going to turn right. I think they're both going to
Oh
just
wow,
kind of
they're both.
reorient their fleets. Turning left
No,
would put them against the wind. So
Yeah. No, it makes
definitely
sense.
no
It
high
makes sense.
risk, high rewards strategies here just yet.
no,
No,
Definitely,
and they're
as you said,
getting.
right out from the gate, feeling each other out.
Yeah, but you got to give this first, like, let's say this first bout here, you got to give it to the Jackals. They've definitely
definitely.
done. They've done more. Look, they barely. I mean, what they've
I,
lost 2 rocket boats. That's all.
yeah, I think what they successfully did here is they baited the Marines to overextend themselves, and then when they got to the central area, right when they got past those pill-shaped islands and they got into the central area, they had the formation. The Marines did not. So the
Yeah,
Marines' focus at this point has to be reforming and getting
yeah.
their cohesion back. And then they have, listen, the Marines have really good cannoneers. I'm not trying to disparage the other team's cannoneers. Everybody's got good cannoneers in this league, but I know that if they can get that fleet formation really tight and they can hit these Jackals, they have absolutely the capacity to turn this battle around. But right now, if we look at the ship HP, we've got a little bit of damage on the Jackals flagship, a little bit of damage on one of their 8-guns. Otherwise, they're basically in the clear. The Marines have a very bloody nose right now. Their
Yeah, and
flagship
look,
is
the
down.
Jackals.
Yeah.
Their turn, they just did a very nice turn. Obviously, easier turn downwind than against the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marines' turn has been sloppy. Look, I
Well,
mean,
they
2 of
have
the
a
ships
lot.
are still pointing there.
They have 2 gunboats on their starboards that they're going to take care of right now, and they have the space to do it. The Jackals are not going to. The Jackals have to go against the wind to get to them. So the Marines are in a
Yes.
good place. They're in a good place right now. If they
Well,
don't, yeah, go ahead.
I am a little concerned that the 13 gun is going out unsupported
Yeah,
onto,
he's
it's got the range to deal with some of these targets out there, but uh, we've seen this kind of thing in the past where they just kind of let themselves go a little bit further than they had intended. Many of us have been in that position, and I'm afraid for what's going to happen here if those 8 guns don't catch up on the Marine
and
side.
look, one of the 8-guns is going the other side of the island there of the Marines.
I mean, again, can they
not
do
good.
it and then they meet back in the middle? The answer is yes. I think they
Hey,
have
Yeah,
plenty of
they're
space.
still very far apart, but if
maybe this
you
is sorry. Continue. Yeah.
yeah, it's just it'd be better to be together, like
So maybe this is one of those reverse bait situations where they see a juicy target out there. Maybe they're banking on the Jackals not remembering that the 13 gun's not as valuable as it used to be, and entice them to come in closer where they can engage them. Um, doesn't seem like the bait is being taken if that's the case. At least not yet.
I mean, to go and take that bait, the Jackals are going to have to do. They would have to go against the wind. It's fundamentally against their interest to do so. But if you take a look at where the Jackals are going, if you take a look on that overhead
They're
screen, you
doing
can
just
see that.
that.
Yeah, well, they
Yeah,
might be. They might
it's-
be. The Jackals are going to have to curve in eventually, and I think, you might be right, Amit.
yeah.
This bait might be too, delectable looking to pass
That,
up.
that long island there is again it's just in the way. The angle that they're coming at is not going to be great unless I mean, if I was the Jackals now, I'd probably turn right, honestly.
Yeah, man.
Then you kind of get behind them. I mean, they should do that actually. They shouldn't go straight, but kind of hard in the moment to see that maybe.
Well,
if you talked about, sorry, go ahead. Go aahead.
no, I just
I mean,
want to
then
predict.
the wind is dangerous, but
Well,
going straight is dangerous too.
So that was the other point I was going to make. You talked a little bit earlier in the pre-show about how this island is the bane for a lot of teams. Like it seems that there is no meta for dealing with it yet, unless you just want to turn it into a
I
straight
think
line. That was
I think it's about to be a
commented there.
catastrophe for the Jackals here.
Yeah,
If they
this looks
cannot,
bad.
if that flagship can gain some speed, turn in aggressively, and just cut them off, and that island on the Jackals their port side, which is the left side of their ships, that's going to hem them in. If the Marines can get their ships in right now, they're going to have a really, really great position over the Jackals, and this could be a turning point in the battle. I'm so
Yeah.
excited to see what happens in the next
Yeah,
minute.
they should have turned right by that island there. And I know it's a risk in going through the wind, but are they turning now?
I think they've
Almost
realized what we've been talking
too
about.
late. They should have done it. They should have just gone right around that island
But
there.
in doing this, those front two ships are good. Look, you can even see as soon as you see that flagship
Yeah.
on the Marines stop like this, that means
Oh
he
yeah.
knows I've got him. I've got him where I want
Oh
him.
no.
I want to hold on to this position as much as possible. Why? Because the 13 gun can hit the 8 gun, but the 8 gun cannot fire back until it turns more. So
He's
we're
got
going to
two
see some serious
targets
damage.
there. Oh
Not to
no.
mention the 3 8 guns that are coming behind it. So this is like a huge force multiplying thing here where,
Oh,
oh, yeah, this front ship is going to be taking some serious damage.
oh no. And the three back ships, they're turning already because
They know, right? So this is where
they
fleet cohesion breaks down in the Jackals. This is where they start to get scared and realize that they're in a bad position and they got to get out of it.
they've left their broken ship. They've left it over
Yeah.
there backing up
Right?
their oh no. Oh
This is
man.
an amazing turnaround, and you can see the damage that is being put into that front ship. It is going to be probably our first ship sunk of the
It's
round.
down. Yeah.
Yeah,
Unbelievable turnaround here.
I think it's actually hilarious. Not hilarious, but smart positioning of that pretty much dead in the water 8 gun from the
It's great.
Marines
It's
there.
brilliant.
Yeah.
I think it only has one cannon on the port side, but if they were to finish dealing with that gunboat that's coming in and just flip their ship around to aim at the enemies, they could get some really nice raking fire onto that
Oh
well,
no.
any ship they feel like. I think that 13 gun from the Jackals is now in view of that
This is
or in range of
disaster
that
now for
broken
the
down 8 gun from the Marines.
Okay, I'm
Ooh.
seeing that first 8 gun go down any second, and then they've got to focus fire on their flagship. The enemy flagship is way healthier. It's still a huge threat, and it's got to be. You got to see. Okay, so they're going to do it. The Marines are going to try and cut behind the enemy fleet. It's a very risky maneuver, especially for the flagship. I don't know if I'd go with the flagship, but if that's what they're going to do, they're very likely going to succeed in getting more than one ship cutting directly behind the Jackals flagship, which would be a tremendous coup for the Marines. They got to go full speed.
Hey, if they're gonna do it,
yeah.
they've got the wind to do it right now.
They
As long
have
as they
the
don't
win.
beach themselves,
They
they're
have
good
the
to
wind.
go.
Oh my God. The Jackals flagship does not seem to be able to turn around. It is now the Marine flagship is out of the hot water here. It's not going to be taking a tremendous amount of incoming fire, and it is going to have the ability to produce incoming fire on that enemy Jackal flagship. We are going to see a total turnaround here of the circumstances for these teams.
Oh no, and it's stuck on the island. The
Oh
Jackals
my God.
flagship. There's nowhere it can go.
It's focusing so
It's
much on those 3 8 guns. Oh my God, the flagship is going to go down. They
and
are
they
now at
and
parity, HP parity from being at least 25% having more HP than the
and
Marines flagship. The Jackals flagship is going to take some serious damage here, and it may go down before the Marines flagship, something I would not have predicted 5 minutes ago.
Good God.
the bloody Marines 8 gun that lost its mast is still there. It's
Yep.
still there,
It's a
holding down the
pest.
other 4 8 guns.
He is
That's all
distracting
they do.
yeah. And it's perfect because that's what you want for it. Yeah, it's gonna sink. It's gonna get hurt.
It's
I mean, it's actually got great HP.
okay.
That's a
Yeah.
flagship down. That is the
Oh,
Jackals flagship down.
My goodness, guys, I gotta
amazing.
find out who from the Marines paid off those 8 guns from the Jackals to leave their their 13 gun behind.
All right, now the
Hey,
question here is like what happens next? Because in very short order, we are very likely going to have 3 Jackals 8 guns versus 5 Marine ships. This is a total revolution of fortune here.
I'm a little surprised that the Jackals decided to turn out towards the northeast. They could have, done ring around the rosy, come around the island, and still be in a position to fight off the enemy advance. Um, but
They
maybe they're gonna
panicked. I think
instead.
they panicked.
I think so, but also think about it this way. Maybe they are willing to just get out of the way, get some space. The breathing room that you get from distance is very crucial to some
Oh,
play styles.
in this sense, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
No, no,
and that
now
way
they're
they
making
would
the right move. Yeah.
exactly because then they could hopefully wrap around that, come back to the south, get some wind, and now the Marines have to come into the winds in their face. So um, it's not over yet. It's not over yet, especially with the reduced reliance on the 13 gun as a force of winning or as part of the win conditions. But it's a huge force multiplier, which, as we can see, there's still a little sliver of health and HP on that Marines
All right.
13 gun there.
It looks like they have finally taken down that D-mass 8 gun. Technically, we're getting very close to well, right now they're tied. I do not, however, think that the Jackals are in a position where they can hold on to that tie. They do only have 7 minutes left. Um, the ship that is damaged, I think, is probably the one that is set far back. And I
Yes,
think they're
that's the
going to
one.
reserve it for the rest of this battle and not put it into any particular danger. They're going to let it deal with gunboats. And that is a smart decision here. Now the Marines really need to sink another boat. That's what they need to do. At this point, it's kind of anybody. This is honestly anybody's game. It really is shocking how this could be anybody's game right now. Who can get one of these 8 guns to put itself in a bad position and get sunk could be the winner of today's match. Very exciting.
So it looks like the Marines will have to go through this channel. If the Jackals block this channel, they could do some pretty good damage. They could sink that 13 gun.
Oh, they definitely
honestly.
could. That 13 gun is
If
limping.
I mean, if knowing the information we know, if they go in and cut them off here,
You know what?
you could see a second turnaround. I mean, maybe.
It's
That's
certainly
what I would
possible.
do.
It's certainly possible. And also, I think the possibility is there for that remaining Jackals 8 gun that is on like the sliver of health to maybe possibly get caught by a gunboat somewhere. I don't see it happening right now. I'm not focusing too much on the gunboats right now, but I could see it getting sunk and then putting the Jackals into like crisis mode. I would
Yeah.
predict that the Marines are just going to hold here. I would be shocked if they go through this channel. And if they do, it would not be to their benefit.
I mean, this could be the Seawolves' aggression. I mean, against the Bona partnership, they forced a channel like this, and they came out on top. See if
I
it
think
works on the Jackals.
so. They're clearly sending one 8 gun into the fray, and they're
Yeah.
leaving a few more. So again, we're seeing a lot of bait in this battle. A lot of come get me here. Look at the Jackals maneuver here. This is a cool one. The Jackals are going to be turning hard to starboard, and they are going to try and cut behind in these last 5 minutes. If they can catch, they're going to have the wind, and they're going to have the strength of numbers. I think that they could do something here. It's only going to have a few minutes to do it. It might not be enough time. In the meantime, they are going to get tagged over this island a little bit, so they've got to keep that ship, whichever one of those ships is really damaged, they've got to keep that ship very far away from the action.
Indeed.
But
And they definitely have to do something quickly because I took a look at the scoreboard and it is trending average points higher on the first Marine, or sorry, the Marine side. So they don't want this to end up in a situation where they're equal on the number of ships because then it may turn out to be that the Marines could pull forward with the points.
yeah,
But they also don't want to get that the very damaged 8 gun sunk as well.
you can
So
see it's got to be this one that's like way hanging
way
back
back,
here.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, like that's me too. It's just there for honestly just to be with the formation. Really,
Yeah,
that's
it
all
has
it
to just
is.
stay alive. That's what it's got to do. That's its job right now. It doesn't look like the Jackals are getting too aggressive here. The Marines have swung their broadsides to the point where if the Jackals did try to cut off the rear, I don't know. If I was a Jackals, I'd be in there right now. I would take my strongest ship and try and cut off behind the Marines. The Marines do not have the maneuvering space that they want.
Yeah, and the Jackals would
Yeah,
have
I'm
the
surprised.
wind to do it.
They have the wind. They have great wind. I
Check
am
out that row.
surprised.
Check out that
I thought
rowboat
they
that's
were.
heading into the middle of the formation there for
Why are they
the.
going to the right of that round island? No, this is.
Yeah, I think they're playing conservative. Maybe they're not looking at the time, but they really need to be because right
Yeah,
now
perhaps not.
they are losing. Well, no, they're losing by points, right? The
Well,
Jackals.
potentially. I mean, it's comparable, but there is obviously a much more damage output on the higher end of the scoreboard. If you just wanted to flip
Yeah,
over
that
to
wasn't great.
yourself,
You can
check.
see.
This was
You can see
I
the
believe
8 gun
yeah.
just took some hits. The Jackals just took a bunch of hits and didn't really do any damage at all.
Yeah, this retreat
Kind of too bad.
is not a great look.
Mistake.
It's not a great look. It's not seizing the opportunity that they could be behind this fleet right now.
Yeah,
No
they're still
question.
taking hits.
The
It
Jackals
looks
could be
like.
behind. I mean, yeah, they were going to take hits going in and they were going to take hits going out. So why not go in, get aggressive, and maybe sink an 8 gun? I think they could have done it.
Yeah, and even if they want to
Yeah.
get really aggressive, they could have potentially just taken out that flagship. Um, are we still calling it the flagship, the 13 gun?
I mean,
guess
it
we are.
still is the flagship. No
Technically
question.
speaking, yes, yeah, it is. Yeah. So if they had focused some fire on
Oh,
that,
what was that? Was that a gunboat? I think it's a gunboat that went down. Okay, wasn't a
yeah.
8 gun. Yeah, folks, if you're looking at the top of the screen, I don't even know if you can even see the numbers there. Don't worry about those numbers. It's all about It's all about the capital ships. All about the big ones. So maybe that what these 8 guns are thinking is let's bully some gunboats and
There's only one
get some
enemy
points.
gunboat left.
Yeah, I'm not seeing how they intend to use this maneuver as a path to victory in this last minute and a half. And so I am worried that the Jackals threw away their last opportunity for a victory here. Nonetheless, a close battle, not a particularly aggressive one. And a shame for it, because I think that these teams, especially with the humongous crews and mercenaries that they had today, could have made this a really, really crazy battle. That would have been one for the history books. And I think the opening here is going to be an impressive win, an impressive turnaround for the Marines, but no one really decisively defeating the other here. Which maybe for the Jackals, after their performance last season in their standings, maybe that's a win.
This is
It's
very
certainly an
reminiscent of
improvement.
the battle between I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it was the Vought Coalition versus the Jackals potentially. I don't remember exactly, but I do recall there was a match where all of the ships on both teams were still alive at the end, and it really just came down to points, and they were very kind of far away from each other when the match ended. This is very reminiscent for me
That was
of that.
Jackals RBF.
Disappointing. RBF, okay, RBF and Jackals. So.
Yeah.
Is a great memory, by the way,
Hey
Babouf. I love
guys,
that.
if I'm not mistaken, that 8 gun on the Jackals just went down. So this is
I am seeing
they
that on the scoreboard.
they got caught
Oh
by a
man,
gunboat. They got caught by
they
a
got
gunboat,
got.
and they
It's
honestly
a
they kind of
terrible
did it
look.
themselves.
It's a
They
terrible
deserve
look.
that. They deserve that. That's a terrible way to end this match, but that was very well deserved.
Yeah, I have to
That's
say
very
that
good.
there's something karmic about that in that they did flee, and in doing so, I think they delivered themselves into defeat on that one.
The Marines, they knew exactly what ship. I mean, it looks like they figured out exactly what ship they. That's very good on that
And
gunboat.
there it is. We've got a Marines victory, and although we are being a little cruel on both of these teams, I have to say the scores are relatively similar. They're very close. So what we've seen here is some very good combat. And I think the takeaway from this is my best moment was that amazing turnaround from the Marines.
Yeah,
how about you
absolutely.
guys?
Yeah, that was. I mean, it literally was the island again. It always is on this one here. They should have the Jackals. They just weren't paying quite attention there. They had a really good start. Honestly, they gave them a bloody nose, but then they kind of lost momentum. They didn't seem to really know where they were going. And the Marines just like that's not a team that you can pull something like that with, right? They'll take the opportunity.
Yeah,
very clearly.
Very disciplined and very controlled.
This is definitely they still have some stuff to iron out. I think the Marines, but it's definitely this is definitely a team that can blossom.
Yeah, I think we can say that I agree with the ironing out, but I think this is the beginning of a good partnership here.
Absolutely, and also Jackals. I think they looked a lot better than they did last season.
Agreed.
They actually did hit. They didn't quite. They should have had that last moments. They should have brought the last minutes. They should have brought the vodka magic and gotten behind them and gotten just rolled the dice, because why not?
Yeah.
You're here to have fun. Like, why not go and attack? But I don't know. They might have just not been looking at the team or something.
Yeah, they could have lost sense of the time, or they could have thought if we get aggressive, we're going to lose that last ship, but you could just kind of leave it behind. So I don't know. Amit, any takeaways here?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the match, I didn't think it was clear cut as perhaps maybe in terms of defining moments. Yes, it did seem like throughout the battle, the Jackals definitely had a good formation. At least to my observation, they were definitely more cohesive, I think, than the Marines were. But it seems that they didn't, as we saw throughout the thing, they didn't capitalize on a lot of the situations that we thought they would. So for me, for that kind of what we would call a turnaround on the Marine side wasn't as big of a deal to me. I still thought there was a chance. We all thought there was a potential chance for them to still pull back and win. They just had to be a little bit more on the risk-taking side of things, and they played it a little too safe. I don't want to say too much too early because it's only the first match of the first season, and that's kind of how these things go. I was participating in the very first match of the preseason, and in the SCP, the philosophy there originally at the time was not just to brawl for the hell of brawling, because that's fun and cool, but we had a very specific strategy behind how we were going to take on the enemy flagship, and that's the reason we got into those brawls. Thereafter, people saw the kind of things that could go wrong with that kind of strategy, and they started to distance themselves more in the starting phases of the matches. I was still very happy with the match itself, just would have liked to see a little bit more decisive action on the part of the Jackals at the end there, but I'm not like an admiral. I'm not going to speak to what was going on there. They will tell us their perspectives on that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. This wasn't the world's most exciting match that I've ever seen in my life, but I definitely do feel like this showed us that these two teams have come here to play to win, right? Neither of them were really, that you could see the intentionality behind their movements and how they really did not want to get caught flat-footed, even though each of them in turn kind of did get caught in a not great situation. There was never a moment where I thought, oh my God. I think the closest was that pill-shaped island where the Marines did really focus and hammer in on that 13 gun. They knocked one of the 8 guns down really low, and then they really absolutely obliterated the 13 gun on the Jackals team. That's as close to a decisive moment as we had, and even that was not a completely game-winning moment. I think the Jackals absolutely had a chance to come back. I agree with you. I feel like that was a missed opportunity at the end of the battle to not cut behind the Marines and try and pour just relentless fire into one of their 8 guns and see if in those last few minutes they could take it down. And yeah, they ended up getting one of their ships sunk by gunboats, so it didn't really work out. That was pretty hilarious that ended up happening. I do not see the Jackals Admiral in here right now, but we do have the victorious Admiral of the evening, Kieran's from the Marines, here with us. Kieran's, do we have you here with us? Can you hear me? I see you're on mute, Kieran, so
yes,
feel free.
I can. Hello.
Hey, congratulations, my friend, on a very good battle. There were highs, there were lows. Let's talk a little bit about your experience through it. In the beginning of the battle, our assessment here was the beginning of the battle, you got a little bit of a bloody nose as you were coming to the islands, but you really parlayed that and that you kind of overextended your 13 gun, lured them in to go get it, and then rush your whole fleet in there and really, really put the punishment on them. Tell us a little bit about what you thought this battle was going to be like and how it ended up playing for you.
Well, we didn't do any research for this. We just sort of went in and we thought it's the first game of the season. Let's test the waters a little bit. There was, I think you described it perfectly, that we blooded our noses at the start, and it was a little bit shaky because I felt a little bit unmatched in terms of what we was up against, and then I really had to play it passively. We had lost a lot of cannons. This team is fantastic at shooting cannons. We lost almost all of the 13 gun cannons almost instantly, and yeah.
And that was when you flipped your ship around, right?
Yeah, you got a lot of mileage out of that starboard side cannon. So,
yeah,
my lord, dude.
Yeah. What I have to ask if it was intentional to overextend that 13 gun toward the latter, like the midpoint of the battle, to try to attract their ships. Like, were you working with the islands there? Were you thinking that thought, or were you just kind of moving and things just fell into place for you?
Yeah, so the plan was to cut them off before they managed to get out into the open waters and potentially trap us against the wall. So us being the faster ship at that time was actually really, really good, because as they turned to starboard to meet us, all their ships were sort of clued together.
Yes.
And it gave us the chance to absolutely hammer that 8 gun, which was great.
Yes.
And then as soon as we had range and rotation for the 13 gun, we all focused it, and yeah, I knew that that was going to be a point where things were going to change for us.
They certainly did. That was the moment. I mean, that was your victory moment right there when you got them. You had the 13 gun against an island. Your 13 gun had slipped just out of its rotation, so you weren't taking heavy fire from the 13 gun anymore.
Yeah.
That was your moment, and it really played off for you. Just really fantastic.
I think towards the end there was a point where we were up against the wall, and I had I hit what I like to call the Admiral's Wall, where I was in very indecisive on whether I should go port to try and meet the fleet, or try and do a whole 180 and start utilizing our starboard cannons. But luckily they didn't commit. If they committed at the end when the 13 gun, like our health was as low as it was, if they committed there and then, they would have sunk us, and that's what I was worried about. I told all of the captains, just defend the 13 gun, just defend the 13 gun, and that's what they did.
How was your feeling of cohesion? I know this team of yours, we slapped it together just last week, and after lots of real negotiating and compromise and all sorts of great stuff, the stuff that good teams are made of. Did you feel a lot of cohesion today amongst the crew, and did you feel a lot of unity there?
Absolutely. Quite shocked, to be honest. Not that I had any bad expectations, but like we've obviously got a lot of new members and a lot of new crewmates to talk to, but everyone worked together really well. Chewie, Seaman, Tigger, and Henry West were the captains, and they all did fantastic. Chewie was giving a fantastic strategy during the game, which I thought was really helpful.
Yeah.
Because sometimes while you're not in the overhead cam, you miss some things. It's better to get the advice from a captain who's definitely the vanguard vessel as well.
Yeah.
Get their perspective, get their advice on the move as well, which I think great. And so yeah, it was definitely helpful, and the cohesion was up there.
That's
I felt
awesome.
like we worked together so well.
Yeah, you've got a team absolutely packed with talent from all the different contributing regiments. So I think you guys are, I think, obviously, like we said, there were some moments where, everything wasn't perfect for you, but I think you've got all the building blocks of a team that can really take it all the way, and certainly make it to a top 3 team and be competing for the #1 slot at the end of the season. And I cannot wait to see how you guys continue to cohese and develop over time. So thank you, Kieran, for an absolutely excellent performance, and congratulations to you and your team and your co-admirals and everybody for your first victory of season 1.
Thank you very much.
And so now let's move on to our Jackals admiral. We have Katsup here. Katsup, how are you doing? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Like
Okay.
I've had some technical issues, but it's all good now.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Tell us a little. So the feeling of our hosts were that you guys had a really we called it bloodying the nose. You bloodied the Marines' nose in the beginning of the battle. You had really, really excellent fleet cohesion all throughout this battle, right up until that midpoint, when you got funneled in and cut off by the enemy fleet. And from there on out, once your flagship sunk, it seemed like you guys were on the defensive from there on out. Tell me a little bit about what your plan was going into this battle, how things developed, and then I think I have 1 or 2 questions for you.
Before that, I have one question. Who was the commander and the crew of the last gunboat on the enemy side? This is my only question I'm gonna have.
Bounty's on his head now.
Yeah, that guy, he took it from a possible tie.
Because he deserves it.
I asked Gunnar the same thing. I said I want to know who got the last shot, I guess, because
I know
it was brilliant.
Infinite was one of the gunboat captains that you guys had put down for the Marines. I don't know if it was him or it was the other guy who I don't have the name for.
Because without this shot, we could have won, and we would probably I knew that one of our 8 gunner was like
very low.
Barely.
Yeah.
Keeping up on the water. You know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, guys, protect this 8 gunner with your own life. Like they would have survived, And I've seen that this kind of worked because all of the shots that came towards this 8 gunner, like basically they hit other ships. until that one shot basically like went through the blockade and hit it was a fallacy.
Whoa. We may be having some technical difficulties here. Katsub, can you hear us? All right. Well, it looks like we may have lost him. Katsub, you just speak up if you are back. Unfortunately, we're not going to probably get him back. I'll give him another 5 seconds, but if we don't hear from him, then maybe, yep, it looks like we've lost him. All right, well,
He's
folks. All right, folks, we'll wrap it up here for the Admiral's interviews. If he comes back, we might give him a little bit of time, but something that we've been interested in doing is once we're finished with the Admirals and Kieran's, we appreciate. Oh, hold on, let's see. Katsub?
Oops. Hello?
Hey, we got him back. All right, continue where you left off. Go ahead.
Also, technical issues, so sorry for that.
No problem.
Okay, so the Fallacion's 8 gunner was like barely holding on the water,
Mhm.
and this one basically like stray shot. From what I know right now, it was like just a single cannonball that hit his ship. He basically didn't manage to run away in time, and that's what basically decided on the outcome of the battle, because if it was not for this one shot, we would have won. Of course, yeah, like there was this one moment like when we were kind of caught in the middle, like you said, but we could have pulled this off, because I basically sacrificed the 13 gunner. I knew that we are going to lose one of our ship. So I was like, okay, let's get our 13 gunner with those powerful guns to basically deal as much damage as they can, while allowing the rest of the fleet to kind of go behind it. You know what I mean? And get the wind. So we could like, get to this ship without the mast, because we've managed to mast one of the 8 gunner. I wanted to sink it,
Yes.
but at the same time, I've had to, kind of sacrifice one of our ship, and we've done that. Then I remembered that we've basically decimated all of the gunboats, the small boats. So I've decided to basically disengage and wait the battle off. Like the rest of the last 3 minutes, it was like, either continue the broadsides and risk the, sinking of the Fallacion's 8 gunner, because it was really badly damaged, or, basically run away and survive. So
your end game, because we were wondering, I think you guys had the chance at the end of the game to cut behind the enemy fleet and maybe get some damage in while they were in that channel
Yes,
towards the end. But you thought we may have more points and we may be able to farm some of these gunboats of theirs and maybe increase the points, get a tie, and win by points. That's basically your win condition as far as at the end there.
That's
Okay.
basically it. However, as I said, I was really afraid of this 1-8 gunner, which was, if I remember well, ahead of the fleet. Like, so it basically was like one shot and it sunk. So I was glad that it managed to, basically sail away. And they've decided, okay, the rest of the fleet follow it, go to the enemy spawn, and sink everything you have on your way, basically. Because I knew the rest of the fleet couldn't catch up with us. They couldn't catch up with us, and they didn't. But, well, that singular gunboat was enough, basically.
Well, there it is. That's the story of victory and defeat there. Unfortunately, Katsub, I have to stop you because we can't have these things go on forever. We do need to wrap up the stream in a little bit. But I want to say on behalf of the hosts, because I think this was a consensus between all three of us, you guys have done a huge job putting together a coalition here that, again, not only can win battles, but very likely are going to win some big battles this season. I know that today wasn't a win for you. It was very close, and I think you could see, if you saw the points, it wasn't a very far difference in the points totals here.
Very close.
Yeah, just overall a very close battle. I think you guys had a lot of healthy respect for each other. And so, I think what you guys have put together this season is a very different and much stronger team than you had last season. And I'm really looking forward to where you guys are going to go. So congratulations for a great fight. Sorry you couldn't win it on this one, but thank you so much for participating again this season. And we look forward to watching both your and your rivals' teams' future battles. So at this point, we will, Admirals, I will catch up with you a little later. We're going to have a little roundtable with the hosts and the correspondents. So we'll catch up with you guys afterwards. And if you guys want, you can jump into the group chats somewhere in the Discord, and we're going to have the correspondents, if you guys will unmute yourselves, and we can have our little chat about what you guys saw on the ground and some of the things that maybe we missed from the bird's eye view. So I want to open the floor to any of our correspondents or any of the co-hosts. Like, what was your takeaways from this battle?
I could say that for sure, the Long Islands are the problems for the teams.
Yeah, big time.
Yes,
This Long
one of the
Islands
things.
has This Long Islands has attributed more to the losses on this map and on the map of the spinned spawns that these Long
Okay.
Islands are as this map has two versions of the spawns, right?
Yeah, I think the point in this map is, like, if people are going to study this in the future, is to stay away. You can't get caught in those islands. That is your number one objective on this map, is to get away from those islands, because you will just be trapped there so long. You can't. There's nowhere to go. If you get caught there, you're done. Even if you've damaged the enemy team so badly, like the Jackals bloodied the Marines pretty heavily, but still they got caught there, and that was it. That was just it.
That is true, but I also thought it was really interesting that the Marines were very careful at the start, and they were not engaging. And I think part of that is because the Jackals were able to hide in the islands.
Yeah.
They had an opportunity to follow them, but I think Lemmer mentioned this, that they didn't do it in time. But I did see them start to turn, they just didn't commit to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
definitely in the opening move there with the Jackals turning into the islands that sort of seemed to throw off the opposite side.
Because in that moment, like, you have a choice if you're the Marines in that opening. Like, you see, once they slip into the islands, they have a lot of cover to protect themselves from, like, a charge. And so as the Marines, you're thinking, okay, either we turn in and we charge their rear. What would very likely happen is, if you did that, is then the Jackals would, like, they would turn with the wind along with the Marines, and then they'd have a line battle going with the wind into the islands. And so, the problem is the distance they had from each other. Because they were so far apart, nobody could really utilize or be punished by the wind, because by the time the other team showed any aggression, whatever team they were trying to show aggression towards would have more than enough space and time to adapt to it and form a defensive or offensive maneuver.
It was interesting, however, when the Jackals tried to leave that island and looked like they were going to suicide charge, but then did a full 180, turned away, and sort of looked like it was a feint from the beginning.
Yes, a lot of baiting today, don't you think?
I think they panicked there when they came to that island. We talked about, they should immediately turn. They shouldn't have on this island. I think they realized that about halfway through and kind of pulled the handbrake. They pulled the emergency brake there. Thought that they were because they realized the trouble they were in, but they should have done it earlier or committed. Like, you can't do a halfway thing.
Yeah, I mean, it did work for a while, because they did get a big lead when they finally engaged. The Marines flagship was taking a lot of heavy damage, and they actually had to do like a full turn. They broke formation. They barely managed to survive that.
I mean, there's no question at the beginning of the game, the bait and feinting that the Jackals were doing lured the Marines to go into the islands and go between those two pill-shaped islands to their disadvantage and not in good order. And that's where, what Pizza is saying here, that initial bloody nose that they got given was because the Jackals for all their baiting and for all their turning and for whatever we might want to criticize about that, they never broke formation. They had a tight formation the whole first half of that battle. And it was really only that pill-shaped island like later on where they got caught. That's when their formation broke. And that's the first time we see them begin to lose anything really major.
Something to note about that first engagement, though, was the Jackals' rear ship was actually not able to keep angle for a large amount of it because they were so spread out. And the way that the Marines engaged meant that the rear ship wasn't getting shots on for a while, so they managed to take that advantage with a ship down effectively.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things is that the Marines also, the flagship at least, I saw it lost a lot of cannons on starboard side, so they were really not as maneuverable afterwards, because any position they had to take, they would need to be looking at port, and that's limiting as well.
Yeah.
I wonder what my counterfactual would be if they, if in a crucial moment where the Jackals were going along the pill-shaped island, and the Marines are quite spread out, where they then turned. If the Jackals had just committed and say, okay, well, we'll just sacrifice the first 1 or 2 8 guns and just commit on this course, Marines are still quite far apart. That might have been a better thing to do, and just say, well, screw the first 8 gun. We're just going to pull this through.
Have the rear ships charge, basically?
No, but just keep going, because they turned about half. We said they should turn around, and they didn't, and then they sort of halfway turned and all sort of broke apart. If they just kept going and say, okay, whatever, the first 8 gun is going to take a lot of damage, but we're just gonna commit to this.
Like staying in order, basically, like holding their fleet formation.
They just keep going and say, okay, whatever, we'll take. I mean, I just feel like they should have either committed, they should have turned immediately, or just kept going. But what they did was come into
Yeah, we saw. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Emmett.
Well, even at the time it was happening, I had remarked that flagship on the Marines was pretty much kind of almost on its own out there. The 8 guns behind it, the 3 of them that were following him, were a little bit a ways, and they were dealing with some stuff off to the other side of the map. So I think Babouf does have a good perspective there, that if they had to, in a sense, maybe sacrifice some HP on that leading 8 gun from the Jackal side, they could have potentially taken down that flagship on the Marine side.
Yeah, they could have even got between the. They could have gone between the fleet.
You know what? Is including going off of that, like, who knows what would have happened after that? Let's say they did do that. You know, the Jackals. I was kind of hoping to see them, as counterproductive as it would be. I was hoping to see them actually charging and make a real mess of things there, because they have a history of doing that. Yes, they were, not very well. Well, maybe that's part of the strategies. They realized
if I could,
they did have their. They did have their messy moment with the quad rocket boat hub.
That is true. Yes,
I was not expecting to see 4 rocket boats out at the same time, because we didn't see that at all in the preseason. We saw either a gunboat and a rocket boat, or 2 gunboats, but never just 2 rocket boats out at the same time.
Wait, could you speak on that? You mean in the beginning or when?
Tell us a little bit about the rocket boat game, because I really did not.
Missed that.
Yeah, because the Marines showed us how not to use rocket boats, because right in the beginning, the worst thing you can do with the small boats is leave them out in open water, because there's nothing for them to hide behind. There's nothing for them to like use as cover to get closer. So if they try to make an approach, you know they're coming. And another thing too is it is possible to do that if the bigger ships have something to shoot at, but the Jackal fleet were out of range. They had nothing else to shoot at, and so they just tore those rocket boats to pieces before they could do anything. Whereas,
that's a great point, yeah.
Whereas the Jackal boats, they waited for the Marine ships to go back into the islands, and then when they came out and attacked the lead ship, there was nowhere it could go. It couldn't turn left or right, and even if it could, it would have sacrificed itself to. Because if it had turned right, it would have gone straight into the enemy fleet, which would not have been good. And there was nowhere for it to go left, because there was a big pill-shaped island there in the way. So they just got barraged in the face with very little return. And then
is that what took out the rocket? Is that what took out the cannons on the 13 gun on the starboard side?
No, that
was a mixture of crew.
Yeah, it was a mixture. But those rocket
I noted
boats,
a couple of KRN cannon destructions there, just as a member of the KRN, I was looking at the kill feed.
Those rocket boats, though, were able to because after they unleashed rockets, each one kind of pulled up alongside an 8-gun and were able to just constantly unload people onto the boats because the rocket boat spawns have been adjusted so they're more equipped for boarding actions. Each rocket boat can spawn 2 carpenters, and we saw with the lead Marine 8-gun, it lost its main mast, and that it lost all of its speed. And
they were definitely utilizing it as sort of like a drop ship, effectively at the front of the fleet and just jumping off the back.
Yeah, the really amazing thing about that particular engagement, right before that, and after the mast went down on that Marines 8-gun, was that the Jackals still had that rocket boat swimming around them and causing havoc and shit right after that too.
And the reason for that was because the bigger ships had something to shoot at. They had the enemy fleet right there next to them. So it's either you shoot at the rocket boat, which is at that moment, it's a less of a threat than the enemy fleet that you're going toe to toe with. So that's when these boats can kind of, fly under the radar, even though they're in broad view and an easy shot. But that's less shots that that the enemy fleet can put on the other fleet. So, in a way, if you do fire at that boat, in another way, it's helping in the sense that it's drawing fire away, and that's less damage you're doing to enemy 8-guns or other ships in general.
And that's it. It's always about, they're at their most useful when you can't spare them the attention to do anything about them. Then they can just sit there and just cause absolute havoc. It was so interesting because I thought that the Marines' early rocket boat game was not the best. It was a lot of wasted opportunities there. But say what you want, but they did somebody on one of those boats did basically clinch it for them at the end, which was such an amazing
I thought that was especially interesting considering how the Jackals had so well utilized their boats up to that point.
I know.
And even went straight for the gunboats at the beginning of the round by doing the feint and turning into the enemy spawn, but it ended up not making the game changer.
I think one of the main things that allowed the Marines to do this clutch and come back from this was that perhaps the Jackals didn't realize how much of a lead they actually had in the in the first half of that match.
Yeah.
They did a lot of damage, and maybe they just weren't sure if they were about to destroy the flagship. Because they could have put more pressure on it.
The points would have been way closer if that 8-gun had not been sunk, because ultimately, when an 8-gun or any ship sinks, there is a huge point increase on the team that sinks it, because every player that had a hand in sinking it, whether it's 1 shot or 10 shots, that's thousands of points that get added to the enemy team's total when you lose a ship.
Yep.
I think what Jackals lack in this match is just a little bit of aggressiveness. To be honest,
I agree with you.
They had the thing that the beginning beautiful. I will even say beautiful.
I think so.
They got the advantage, but they do not know what to do with it.
That's
correct me if I'm wrong, but no one had an eye in the sky for this match, did they? Because I feel like if either team had an eye in the sky, that might have made a big difference because they would have seen the damage difference on the ships despite all the ships being up.
I'm not sure. Do they look at the stream perhaps also?
I don't think they watch the stream. What I think is possible, and I think probably everybody does this a little bit, is if you lose your ship, if you're a captain and you lose your ship, very likely you'll then switch over, because a captain without a ship, not really going to be doing too much for the rest of the battle. Oftentimes these guys are going to switch over and pull out to that overhead screen. However, I think it is important to note, Katsub, who was the admiral for the Jackals, I don't have him listed as a captain on any ship, which means that he is overhead. And this is not new. This is something that they've done a few times, where some of the teams have their admiral on their 13-gun. Kieran's was a 13-gun captain today, admiral and captain. Sometimes they have the admiral not as one of the captains, but instead doing an overview, seeing that bird's eye perspective just like we do. So not only do you, with that bird's eye perspective, do you have the bird's eye perspective, which is nice. You can see the ship HPs. If you're not, I think if you, so long as you don't spawn in on either side, you might. There's a way where you could see certainly some of the ship HPs, and so that gives you even more information. The cost of that is that you're not right there on the ground, being able to react to like by the second thing. So sometimes your orders might take into consideration things that the guys in the, so like there's pros and cons to it. A lot more information as a commander. I've been thinking about doing it myself in some of the battles of letting the guys captain and me just have the overhead and commanding from above. But the thing that holds me back is the idea of not, having that like that moment to moment awareness of what's happening. It can be a sacrifice. So,
well, I could say it as Vodkaja is no more. For us, as we have the same system as the Loco was the overhead, I was the person that was on the ground taking orders and translating in from the thing that he wants to do.
Yes.
I was
Did
the person on the ship that translated the orders.
Did you find that was easy or hard?
Probably a little hard because mostly of the language barrier.
Mm-hmm. God, that makes it even harder.
Beside of that, sometimes I just was a little too busy to translate the orders, so captains sometimes do what they do. I do what I do.
All right.
Cannot say that.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it's kind of like you pick and choose which orders you want to follow in that situation.
That's true.
All right. Well, any other major takeaways from today's battle? I feel like we've covered a lot of it.
I just want to search around it. Oh yeah, you go ahead, Swaggington, and maybe else.
So I noticed that a lot of the KRN members had cannons, despite the fact there were high numbers for both teams. So obviously, the Jackals had been weighing up who they wanted on the guns, rather than just chucking everyone sort of in first and then mercs just displaced around ships. They did seem to place the mercs in places where they think they were usable. Yeah, so something to look forward to.
Oh, good. I think it's today was a particularly difficult day because of the high volume of players, which I think is great. But I know that as a mercenary, sometimes it means that you're not going to get prime position. Somebody else is going to get a cannon, and maybe you're just standing by. The thing on this season that I want to console everybody with is we will not be just averaging out every mercenary score that you have. We are going to pick, when we're picking the end of season mercenaries for awards, we're going to only use the top, I think it was like top 10, but I have to check again, but it's basically a top percentile of your mercenary appearances. You have to come to a majority of the games as a mercenary. But if you do that and you have, only a handful of games where you really popped off because, you're not into complete control of where you're put, those are the games that we're going to count. So we really are going to be looking for like the best performances from every mercenary. So don't let it stop you. You can still go in there and have fun as a mercenary. And if you don't have a time where you're on a cannon racking up the points, that's not going to negatively impact you. We're going to make sure that we have a way of recognizing the mercenaries who really output great performances throughout the season. But Boof, did you have anything you wanted to say before we finish up?
I sort of wanted to note that like this was a semi rematch of the very first match of the preseason, which was Jackals against Bona Partnership. Now with Jackals Marines, which is sort of half of the which is half Bona Partnership, and I mean what a huge difference. I mean it's a different map but similar. I think it's the one that's tilted. In that that very first match, Katsup, you probably remember, the Jackals stormed across the map. They had the wind, but went all the way across the map into the enemy spawn and immediately got their mass taken off by rocket ships. While the Bona Partnership sort of kind of lumbered around a little bit. It was a fun match, but I'm sure, but it was, you can just see the quality difference hugely, right? Here you had two teams that really were like feeling each other out. We have our critical points here. Say, they weren't aggressive enough here, they should have done this and stuff. But I mean, you can just see them just moving way more deliberately than they were in the very first match there, where you could sort of see two teams that Well, it was the first match of the preseason. They just weren't as experienced, but that level of experience has just absolutely exploded, and I think we're in for a really good season now because the quality is just so much higher.
These teams have really grown up, and they've grown up with each other as well. So they kind of understand, who they're dealing with, and that could be one of the big reasons we saw that, big standoff distance originally in the beginning of the match. So yeah.
Well, with that, I will thank each and every one of you guys. Without your great camera work today, we would not have had as wonderful of a viewing experience for our audience. Thank you to my co-hosts, Amit and Baboof, and of course to the entire team of staff that is behind the production of this every week. We will be coming at you next week, though I will not be, because looks like I'm up next week. It looks like we have the Leviathans versus the Krakens, if I'm not mistaken.
Match.
Next week. That is
match.
We are getting some of these heavy hitting matches done.
Definitely a big match to have early.
El Clasico of the NSL here.
Like that is going to be a hell of a fight, because we had some very, very close battles. Both of these teams are just top tier teams, and I am so excited. Swaggington, I really, I wish you and your team the best next week, and let's leave it all out on the fields and have a really good time.
We are definitely excited for that one.
Yeah, we are too.
I know. Best of luck to you too.
Yes, and guys, thank you so much. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed. This is season 1 of the NSL. I am Lamerck. It has been a pleasure hanging out with you, and we will see you next week.